Joining us in studio, Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, great to see you. Happy bye week.
Fellas, good to see you. Good to be here.
See you.
All right, let's start with the news about Azeez. I know this hit hard, 3-game suspension. And, Nick, one thing you pointed out in your press conference that I think everybody needs to know is what kind of man we're talking about here, off the field as well as on the field, what he means to this football team, the community, all of it, really.
Tremendous person, tremendous human being. He's done a lot for the football team, both on and off the field. And he's a good football player. And his story is well chronicled, what he means, I would say, to his family, multiple teams have been associated with. He's basically been around D'Amico for his entire career. So think highly of Azeez. So whatever the process is, we'll kind of work through it and to make the modifications and adjustments as we see fit.
Not having the experience that D'Amico did with Azeez, what's your experience been like with Azeez, Nick, getting to know him this year since he's been here?
Tremendous. You know what I mean? He's soft-spoken, has a big heart, cares a lot about people, pours into people, pours into his teammates. I mean, everything that you really want, I would say, in a football player to represent your program. So just from afar, having played against him, even when he was back in San Francisco, and then having played against him last year when he was with the Titans, this was somebody that you had a lot of respect and admiration for from afar, and then we're able to see it up close and personal on a day-to-day basis. And no surprising that he's had the career that he's had.
All right, the football part of this, obviously, with the bye week, you have Miami next, but you have time to get ready knowing that you're not going to have him. So you have a lot to work with there at the linebacker position.
Yeah, we do, and we've had to play a few games without him here this season because of injuries. So Henry's logged a lot of snaps. Neville's had his opportunity to play. Devin White's had some snaps. We'll see where we are with Christian Harris in terms of getting him back in the fold. So whoever we have will make it work. But overall, that room, like we feel we have a lot of depth. Jake Hansen is another player. I mean, he's made more of a contribution in the kicking game. But when Jake's had to play defensively, he's gone in there and given us some snaps. And Delshawn also has experience playing. So we'll figure out what we have to do and try to make it work. Kind of the one new addition potentially would be Christian, if we get him back, which there's a possibility that will happen. So whatever we got to do, we'll make the most of it.
At that position, one guy that you mentioned was Neville Hewitt. I know you were asked about him in your presser, Nick, and he's a guy that you feel his presence on special teams, but when he's had to go in there, that Green Bay game, he gets that pick early on. He made a number of nice plays. He tipped that pass late in the game that almost got picked off. What has he meant? He's been here. I think he's maybe been here your whole stint since you've been here. What has he meant to the Texans organization since he's gotten here?
Yeah, we talked about him, I think, a little bit earlier in the year. Like when you look up in a dictionary the word professional, I mean, Neville embodies it. And when he's ever had his opportunity to play more defensively, he usually takes advantage of it. But the way he approaches his job, the way he works, the way he cares, just his overall thought process and mindset, and he embraces his role, whatever that is. Can't say enough about how he's handled his entire career. And I think we were very purposeful when we added Neville to the team back when we first arrived here, and however many years ago that was, having played against him multiple times because he had played for the Jets. Right. He'd played for the Dolphins. So here's a player you have some degree of familiarity with, like Azeez, different, but haven't played against him, haven't seen him. And we felt that he would have a role in some capacity, whether it was defensively or in a kicking game, and it's kind of come to fruition.
His story is such a great example, and this might be more of an off-season conversation, but in your press conference, you talked about talent. Yeah, everybody's got talent, but it's what you do with it. It's the work you do every day that really matters. Maybe you are a special teams player that can play as well, 11 on 11 in a regular defense-offense situation. You can really add to your arsenal personally. It's the work you put in, right?
Absolutely. It's not necessarily how you get into a building. It's what you do with those opportunities when you walk in a building. And Neville, we have a number of players like in our building, is certainly emblematic of that whole notion or idea. So speaks to who he is as a person, his mindset, the work that he puts in the off season. He's always prepared. He's always ready to go. In the event that there is an opportunity and he has to go play, then teammates trust him to do the right thing. And he's worn the green dot, which is not easy to do. So you have the communication coming from the sideline, from D'Amico, and then you have to disseminate that information to the front. So he's handled everything really, really well.
So longer question in a sense, Nick, but Mark and I have always talked about, we've talked to others that have always said, look, you don't know until Thanksgiving what kind of team you've got. Like, you really don't know what that true team is by Thanksgiving. It's kind of to do with the bye week. We've never had a bye week this late. So now we got the bye week. But I think we know what kind of team we already have. I know you've got a self-scout, but you guys do that every single week as it is. And you probably did it back when you had the mini-bye because We weren't going to have a bye until week 14 as it was. So I know you have to self-scout. I know you have to do that. But is there a different focus because of when the bye week is and what you have coming up after the bye week?
Not necessarily. I think the point that you make that you're always kind of self-scouting your team really week to week because you go through the game. What happened in the game? What did we do well? What didn't work? Do we have to make an adjustment? Personnel, scheme, a little bit less of this, a little more of this. And then as the year goes, you have another checkpoint. All right, because you have more of a body of work that teams see. Now you kind of have a natural break point. So now we can kind of take a step back and say, all right, over these next 4 weeks, regardless of who we play, what are some of the things that we want to carry that are consistent? What are some things that may be specific to the opponent, which goes to your opponent study?
Yep.
So which the next opportunity will be Miami. So it's constantly moving and evolving. It's not all of a sudden you play 13 games.
Right.
Now let's self-scout our team because we have the bye and then figure out what's happening or what's going on. So try to stay ahead of it as much as you can. And you're not going to even teams coming off the bye, even like going back to Jacksonville this past week, there was a good chance they were going to make some adjustments and modifications, but within their scheme. Yep. It wasn't if they're going to like a brand new scheme, they're going to come here with a bunch of new ideas. That typically is not going to happen. But if you have something that might give you an advantage each week, then you might try to implement it.
Yep.
Running game, Nick. In the first half against Jacksonville, it's not what you want it to be. In the second half, it's what you want it to be, and you were able to end the game with the ground game. What is there to that? Teams sticking with that ground game. It's got to be tough, especially when it's not quite there yet, but wears teams down or whatever happens in the second half when it starts to really take hold.
Sometimes the run game is really about volume. So you want to try to, however many carries you think you want to have going into the game, maybe that comes to fruition, maybe it doesn't. Let's say in the first half, Jacksonville did a good job taking some of the edge runs. We weren't able to kind of get it maybe blocked a certain way, or they did a good job with their front, the way they schematically defended it. In the second half, we were able to hit kind of the inside zone there that Joe popped out. Then we got the run to the edge for the touchdown. And then even some of the plays at the end of the game were well blocked and well executed. So sometimes it comes down to really just settling in. How are they playing the front? What runs maybe match up with that front? Going back to kind of what John and I were just talking about, maybe a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. So that's kind of how the run game sort of evolves. And sometimes it's about volume, and then at some point you pop one, and then it makes the picture look a whole lot better.
Now, I know after the game, D'Amico gave the offensive line a game ball, but I'm going to push hard for Cade Stover, Robert Woods, some of the wide receivers and tight ends blocking, because some of the blocks that those guys had, in particular Cade, Dalton made a few, but Cade in particular. And I know we've talked about Cade before and what you liked about him when he was coming out of Ohio State. And we had him in here, and we had him in studio, and he talked about the Minnesota game and how the Minnesota game was like this light going on moment. Like, I'm not having that happen again. Like, I'm not having that happen again. And Joe has mentioned it. If 87's in front of me, I'm following 87. How much has Cade meant and the receivers to the blocking to make sure that Joe springs some of those runs that he had?
And this offense is huge. It's paramount. It's actually something that we talk about in the offseason in terms of player acquisition. You're going to have to be able to handle that responsibility. Yep. Some can handle it better than others. You're not asking every player to do the same thing. But I would say, Cade, it's interesting, just going back to the whole notion of like self-scout.
Yeah.
Like, here's a good example of a individual self-scout looking at the Minnesota game. Minnesota's a good front.
Yeah.
Grenard, Van Ginkel, some of the things that happened during the course of the game. I know exactly what he's talking about. And it's like, all right, well, wait a minute. Like, I don't want this to happen.
Right.
So, all right, technique. But it usually goes back to your fundamentals, your foundation that you put in place. Yep. Cade's as mentally and physically tough as any player that we have on the team, cares a lot about football, wants to improve, and he has improved. And for Joe to say that speaks to the trust that he has in Cade. And then just going back to Robert, the block that he made on the last play, went in there and basically sealed off Miller. And that was able to create a little bit of space. And Robert's done that multiple times over the course of his career. Yep. So that's why you have Robert Woods on your football team. Yep. So he does some of those hidden things that not everybody sees. I would categorize him as kind of a glue guy. Yep. And he brings so much to the table, which is why he's here.
But you look at the numbers throughout his career, Nick, this guy's got some pelts. You're not going to find that many, I would think, that many veteran receivers who have done what he's done who are willing to do that as well.
Speaks to his selflessness. It speaks to his mindset and just embracing the whole team concept. I mean, I've known about Robert Woods since when he was in Buffalo, how good of a receiver that he is. And then when you went to the Rams, I mean, this guy's put up 70, 80, 90 reception seasons. His role has evolved over the course of his career, never complained, has embraced his job. and he goes out there and he helps the team win. That's all you can ask for in players.
95-yard bomb against us in 2017 in the Coliseum.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, I don't want to be reminded of that. I'm going to put two plays to get, well, not two plays, but one play that was an offensive play to point out something about a rookie. On the last play of the game, Robert has that block on Ventrell Miller. And if you watch it closely, you see the Jacksonville Jaguars corner does not engage at all. Like, he's just like, no, I'm out here. And the runs right at him. Kamari Lassiter couldn't be more opposite of that. Like, if the run is coming his way, he's diving in like he's a linebacker. And I know when we talk about corners, you talk about speed and how does he cover and do all that. How much of the analysis, Nick, when you were doing it draft-wise, and this satisfies the contractual obligation of asking about a rookie, of Kamari?
It's Stover already.
Yeah, it's Stover, so I get two.
A twofer.
How much was Kamari's desire to be physical in the run game kind of add to his draft evaluation as you guys were looking at it?
Significant part of it. The corners have to tackle in this defense. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if you have a player that doesn't have the right mindset, that's not willing to tackle, doesn't have the capacity to tackle, regardless of how well he covers, then we have to really think hard and long about that particular player. But that was the thing about Kamari Lassiter that continued to show up. Physical, tough, contact player, wants to insert, wants to be a part of the run force. He plays corner with a linebacker mentality. Probably not too many corners like that. But that's, I'd say, a big part of the evaluation and one of the reasons that he's here.
All right, so Johnny doesn't have a scouting question this week, so there goes that contractual obligation.
Scouting report on the bye week.
But I've got one on scouting the bye. All right, so if I gave you two choices, you have this bye or you have the earliest bye possible. You want the earliest or the latest?
I'll take the latest.
Okay.
It's the best for the team.
Yeah.
Just from a physically, mentally, give them a chance to recover. So it's a work and it's a grind to get to that point. And the schedule has kind of been a little bit different this year. We've kind of had just some different breaks or stops and starts. Play Thursday night, you have an extra day or so. Yeah. The players probably would like it right in the middle. Sometimes the early bye, it's almost as if, well, we're not like quite ready. Right, yeah. It's like, the bye's here already?
Yeah.
And then you got to play another however many games. So however late as possible, so we'll take it.
How does the Hall of Fame game, the start of training camp, mid-July basically, factor into all of this?
Well, we started earlier than everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think from the players' just physical, just well-being, they're probably feeling that. So we go back 6 weeks of training camp, 3 preseason games, 13 games in a regular season. I mean, it's a lot of football. It's taxing on everybody. Players, coaches, staff, support system. So it's a good opportunity really for everybody to kind of refresh, unwind, get some time outside of the building, but also understand, come back with the right mindset, ready to go for the stretch run here.
It's like being a teacher on an in-service day. The students are all gone. Now the teachers get to hang out and do that. But after the bye, and I don't even know if I want to look forward to that in some sense. We all need some rest. But then it's a full week for Miami, and then a shorter week for Kansas City, and then a really short week for Baltimore. I know you can't look at them in totality, but it is 3 games in 10 days, Nick. I know you guys have probably thought through the process of going through that. A, we know it's going to be difficult, but B, what's kind of the plan on handling those 3 games at such a short amount of time against really good football teams?
Yeah, sure. You really have to kind of pre-plan the schedule a little bit, at least from a staff standpoint, know how you're going to handle it. Miami, sort of a normal week, and then once the Miami game is over, it'll be normal to a point. And then you obviously have to flip the page. It's like playing on Thursday night when you have a Sunday game. So this time it's Saturday for Wednesday. So we'll make some adjustments, modifications as needed. The most important thing was just getting the players as healthy and as fresh as they can be for that opportunity. One's at home, one's on the road, so it's pretty balanced that way. So in terms of the preparation, we'll have certain members of the staff look ahead a little bit, kind of work on the preparation so they can get the information to the coaches, so they can kind of flip the page quickly from one opponent to the next.
Well, the interesting thing is after the Ravens game on Christmas, then you get another mini bye before the regular season finale.
That's exactly right. So we've kind of had these like miniature sort of buys in around the full scale 1 week bye.
You were asked about C.J. Stroud in the press conference, and you look at C.J.'s numbers, top 5 in the league in passing yards, and here you are, 8-5 as a starter in year 2. And I think people sometimes overlook the facts, which is the Texans are winning, and he's the starting quarterback in his 2nd year.
I couldn't have articulated that any better, Mark. So C.J.'s had a really good year. He's played a lot of good football for us. So certainly some plays I'm sure he would probably look at and tell you, yeah, I'd like to have that back here a little bit. But he's gone up there multiple times and talked about shoot or shoot, which that's his mentality. That's his mindset. So he wants to play a certain way. So he played a lot of good football. So glad he's our quarterback.
I bet if we did a scouting report on Miami, you could give it to us right now.
I probably could, actually.
I'll go with this. We won't go full school. We won't go full scouting report. But it is Tua Tagovailoa, and we've seen him make progress. Talk about quarterbacks going through adversity. I remember being there, and I think it's 2021, and I'm watching him before the game, walk up and down the field, and I'm like, okay, getting ready for Tua, and then all of a sudden he doesn't start. We're like, whoa, this is weird. Mike comes in, all of a sudden the offense changes a little bit. What are you seeing in the growth of Tua, and what do you think that sort of teaches you about quarterback growth and mindset?
I think it's a really good profile and a really good case study, and it's a good reminder for young players. Everybody's going to deal with some ups and downs, and then when you get in a situation that kind of works for everybody, then you can maximize your talents and your opportunities. And, I mean, Mike's done a great job. There's no question about it since he's been the head coach. A really good system, probably a lot of elements that are similar to our system, but Tua has always been an accurate passer. And they have a lot of good skill, a lot of fast. This will probably be, I mean, honestly, between them and Baltimore, like two of the fastest teams we're going to play. They just put a lot of stress on you defensively. But relative to Tua, he's done a really nice job. He's a good player. He's had to deal with some things medically. A lot of respect for him. Great person, really good quarterback. So he's certainly going to present some challenges in that game.
Is this the first time we're facing a lefty this year?
I think
does that play a role? I mean, that sounds like something that your former boss Bill Belichick would have, he's a lefty, ball spins differently. Like that sounds like something he would have brought up, but does that matter?
Yes and no. I think you might want to just look at the pass distribution, with left-handed quarterbacks. Is it more tilted toward one side than the other? So, I mean, you look at some different things, but in the end, they make good decisions. They're accurate with the ball. It might affect right tackle, left tackle, maybe how you deploy those folks. But other than that, how well does he play quarterback? And you're reading the quarterback and have an understanding if it's come out of the left hand, it's come out of the left hand, and just play it accordingly.
So college football playoff coming up. How does that affect how you scout athletes getting ready for the draft? Do you deploy your scouts to go out there, and are they lobbying for certain games? Because this time
to get
of
to the
year,
playoff games.
you can get like the Bahamas Bowl or something, but hey, I got a college football playoff game over here.
Unless they have to see a specific player or want to see a player specifically live, maybe a player has been out because of injury or something's come up, there's probably a good shot we won't see many bowl games live because a lot of the work has been done. Matter of fact, we're going to kind of have our first round of draft meetings here next week. We're going to have our road scouts in the building, kind of start the initial information gathering process. What do we need to know? What do we need to find out over the next 2 to 3 months? That's really the focus, but it's hard to believe that we're already at that point.
But you could have certain guys who are okay during the regular season, and then they're playoff primetime performers, and that happens in the NFL too.
Yeah, and you have to be careful of just putting too much stock in one particular game. So is that one game, or is that performance emblematic of what they've showed over the course of their career? So you have to just be careful because it works both ways.
I know Jim's got a staff of scouts, the guys that have been around the league for a while with the Senior Bowl. And I know Eric Galco with East West, he's got people that work with him. And so they've got people in their building. But how much do those guys talk to you and the scouts and throughout the league about players at the senior? Hey, this guy from Iowa, what do you guys think of him? Or if you guys want to see a guy down at the Senior Bowl, how much do you discuss that with those guys?
Each team's probably a little bit different. We're not typically involved in those conversations. We might have more intimate conversations when we're there on the premise. So talk to Jim at the Senior Bowl a little bit, or maybe talk to Eric at the East West. But they have a good process in place. It's funny, when you go to a college game, you'll see somebody from the Senior Bowl or somebody from the East West because they're kind of doing the same thing. They're trying to recruit, identify certain players that they think other teams would want to see. So we try to stay out of that, including the combine process as well. So whoever is there and available, we'll evaluate, but we probably try to stay out of it in terms of making any recommendations.
Yeah. I know you're always plugged in, but for a player, is it best to unplug during the bye or kind of keep the iPad or device handy and look at things and keep your mind on it a little bit?
It's probably case by case. It's probably twofold. Some players, staff, prefer to go completely dark, and that works for them. Other players, maybe they want to look at something and kind of keep tabs on it. So you're never far from it. We're going to be thinking about it. D'Amico and I are going to be thinking about it here over the next handful of days. Really where you kind of maybe get the extra unwind time is over the weekend because you just don't have whether it's Saturday night meeting, Sunday game, travel Saturday, Sunday game. So let's say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those are the days where you can probably step away during the week, probably going through your routine. It's important to get away, but it's also important to not do nothing. So you want to make sure you're moving your body, you're staying active. Physically, you're probably not going to lose that much, but you just don't want to kind of sit on your rump there for 7 days and then come back and think you're going to be in good condition or spirits on Monday.
Do you wake up like Mark and I do in a cold sweat on Sunday? Like, we got to be
Where do
somewhere.
I have to be?
Yeah.
And we're not there because we're so used to it.
Missing the final exam.
I think I actually have to be at NRG on Sunday because my youngest daughter has a cheerleading competition.
Oh,
so
nice.
I think I'm going to be in. I think that's right, or it's the following week. But
Well, you are now.
Yeah,
You
I'm
are
going to
now.
have to be there at some point. I
Sounds
think.
like that could take a while. It sounds like that's an all-day thing, Nick. All right. Oh, I'll bring this up with you because we asked Coach this. All right. So the girls want to watch a movie. All right. One of these Pixar animated type movies. You have these choices.
Okay.
Inside Out, Up, Sing, Toy Story, or Minions.
I'll say Minions. And the only reason I'll say that because we actually went this summer as a family to the movie theater to watch Minions.
Part 12
So,
or whatever it was. Yeah.
They had a lot of fun. I had no idea what was going on in the movie. So I still don't know what
you
happened.
You couldn't jump into the
I
character development?
I couldn't really. So I was trying to figure out how I can read a book in a movie theater, but it didn't work.
We have to have a skit. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Have fun on the bye.
Thanks, fellas.